She's my biggest professional failure. Those were the words I heard Dr. William Bradford say into his microphone, standing at the podium of Boston General's annual Foundation Gala. The crystal chandeliers caught the light of his perfectly silver hair. 500 of the city's medical elite turned in their seats, curious about who had failed the legendary chief of cardiology. I felt my husband Michael's hand tighten around mine under the table. I knew what was coming. I'd been married to his son for 3 years. I'd endured 3 years of these moments. Then Dr. Bradford smiled, that practiced smile that had graced the covers of medical journals, and gestured toward our table. Actually, that's my daughter-in-law, Dr. Rebecca Chen. She insists on practicing cardiothoracic surgery, though I've tried to guide her toward more suitable specialties. Dermatology, perhaps. Pediatrics. Something less demanding. The laughter that rippled through the ballroom wasn't cruel, exactly. It was the polite kind of laughter that happens when someone with power makes a joke at someone else's expense, and everyone knows their place in the hierarchy. I didn't move. I'd learned not to react. Michael's hand had gone still in mine, neither supportive nor withdrawing. Just frozen. Like he always was when his father put me in the crosshairs. My name is Rebecca Chen, and I'm a 4th-year resident in cardiothoracic surgery at Boston General Hospital. At 32, I'm one of 2 women in my program. I came from San Francisco, the daughter of immigrants who ran a small grocery store in the Sunset District. My parents saved every dollar to put me through college, then medical school. I graduated top of my class at UCSF. I matched into one of the most competitive surgical programs in the country. None of that mattered to Dr. William Bradford. I met Michael during my first year of residency. He was a cardiology fellow, brilliant and kind, with his mother's warm eyes and his father's commanding presence. We fell in love over midnight coffee in the residence lounge, over shared exhaustion and the strange intimacy of people who understood the brutality of medical training. He proposed on a rare Sunday off on a beach in Maine, and I said yes before he finished asking. I didn't meet his father until 2 weeks before our wedding. Michael had always made excuses. Dad's traveling for conferences. Dad's in surgery. Dad's busy with hospital administration. I understood. We were all busy. The meeting happened at a restaurant Michael's father chose. Les Bernardins, upscale French, the kind of place where the staff remember your preferences and your name comes with a certain weight. Dr. Bradford was already seated when we arrived, reading glasses perched on his nose as he reviewed what looked like a research paper. He looked up when we approached. Extended his hand to me without standing. You must be Rebecca. Michael's told me about you. UCSF Medical School, very respectable. Your parents run a grocery store, he said. My parents own a grocery store, I corrected gently. Own, not run. Of course. He smiled. I'm sure they're very proud. Not every daughter of shopkeepers becomes a doctor. The dinner lasted 2 hours. He spoke mostly to Michael, occasionally asking me questions about my training that felt designed to expose gaps in my knowledge. What's your opinion on the latest TAVR outcomes data? Have you scrubbed in on any minimally invasive mitral valve repairs? I answered each question, but he'd already moved on before I finished, talking over me to Michael about his own cases, his own innovations, his own brilliance. When the check came, he insisted on paying. Consider it a wedding gift, he said. Though I do hope you two are being sensible about the ceremony. Nothing too extravagant. Medical residents don't make much money. After all, we'd already planned a small destination wedding in Napa. Michael's mother Catherine had been excited about it, had helped me choose flowers and tastings over video calls. But when Michael told his father, Dr. Bradford refused to attend. Too far, he said. Too inconvenient. If you insist on this foolishness, don't expect me to participate. Catherine came anyway. She cried during the ceremony and hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. I'm so happy for you both, she whispered. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry about William. I didn't understand what she was apologizing for until we returned to Boston and I really became part of the Bradford family. Dr. William Bradford was a giant in cardiology. Pioneer of several catheter-based interventions, author of the definitive textbook on interventional cardiology. His program at Boston General was one of the top 3 in the nation. Residents competed to work under him. Pharmaceutical companies courted him, hospital administrators deferred to him, and he made it very clear that I was an embarrassment. Not publicly, Not at first. In private, at family dinners, he'd ask when I was planning to switch specialties. Cardiothoracic surgery is brutally competitive, Rebecca. The hours are impossible. The physical demands are significant. You're a small woman. Have you considered that you might not have the stamina? Michael would shift uncomfortably. Dad, come on. I'm just being realistic, Dr. Bradford would say. I'm trying to help her avoid disappointment. But I didn't switch. I stayed in CT surgery. I was good at it. My hands were steady. My spatial reasoning was excellent. I could see the anatomy in 3 dimensions, could anticipate complications before they happened. My attendings praised my technique. I published 2 papers in major journals. I won a research grant to study minimally invasive approaches to complex cardiac repairs. That's when things escalated. Dr. Bradford started making comments at department meetings, questioning my research methodology, suggesting my grant was awarded because of diversity initiatives, not merit. He never said it directly, never left evidence, but the implications hung in the air. Other residents started treating me differently. Some with pity, some with subtle dismissal. Michael tried to defend me at first. Dad, you need to stop. Rebecca's an incredible surgeon, but his father had a way of making Michael doubt himself. You're too close to this, son. You can't be objective about your wife's abilities. I'm trying to protect both of you from the disappointment when she doesn't make the cut. Over time, Michael's defenses grew weaker. He stopped contradicting his father, started suggesting gently that maybe I should consider my options. Maybe Dad has a point about the lifestyle. We want kids someday, don't we? How would that work with CT surgery call schedules? I felt myself becoming smaller, quieter. At family dinners, I stopped sharing my successes. When I completed my first solo CABG, I told Michael but asked him not to mention it to his father. When I was selected to present my research at the American College of Cardiology conference, I didn't bring it up at Sunday brunch. Catherine noticed. She'd catch my eye across the dinner table, a sadness in her expression that I was only beginning to understand. She'd been married to William Bradford for 34 years. She'd raised their son in the shadow of his ego. She knew what it was like to be diminished by someone who was supposed to love you. The foundation gala was in April, spring rain streaking the windows of the Four Seasons ballroom. Michael and I sat at table 12 with other residents and junior faculty. Dr. Bradford sat at the head table with the hospital CEO, the board chairman, and several distinguished guests I didn't recognize. The evening followed its predictable rhythm. Speeches about the hospital's mission, videos of grateful patients, announcements of major donations. Dr. Bradford gave the keynote address, discussing the future of interventional cardiology, name-dropping collaborations with Stanford and Mayo Clinic. Then came the moment I described. The joke about his biggest professional failure. The polite laughter. Michael's frozen hand in mine. I was about to excuse myself to the restroom, to compose myself in private, when a woman stood up from the head table. She was in her mid-50s, tall and elegant in a navy dress, with steel gray hair cut in a sharp bob. She picked up her microphone. William, she said, her voice cutting through the murmur of conversation. I'm afraid I have to disagree with your assessment. Dr. Bradford turned, his smile faltering slightly. He clearly hadn't expected to be contradicted. Margaret? I was just having a bit of fun. The woman Margaret walked toward our table. The room had gone very quiet. I'm Dr. Margaret Walsh, she said, looking directly at me. Chief of Cardiothoracic Surgery at Johns Hopkins. And I've been following Dr. Chen's work very closely. My heart stopped. Dr. Margaret Walsh. I knew the name. Everyone in CT surgery knew the name. She'd been the first woman to chair a top CT surgery program. She'd pioneered multiple surgical techniques. She was legendary. She turned back to Dr. Bradford. Your daughter-in-law's research on minimally invasive mitral valve repair is groundbreaking, William. Her outcomes data is remarkable. In fact, she smiled, I've been asked to recommend candidates for a new NIH task force on innovative cardiac surgery techniques. Dr. Chen is at the top of my list. The silence in the ballroom was profound. Dr. Bradford's face had gone pale, then flushed dark red. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. I wasn't aware that you two knew each other. Dr. Walsh walked to my chair. She put her hand on my shoulder. We don't. Not yet. But I've read every one of her publications. I've reviewed the videos of her surgical techniques. She's doing work that's years ahead of her training level. She looked at me then, and I saw something in her eyes. Recognition, maybe. Or understanding. I was in your position once, she said quietly. Told I wasn't strong enough, wasn't tough enough. Should consider other specialties. My father-in-law was a thoracic surgeon. He said the same things to me that I imagine you've heard. My throat tightened. I couldn't speak. The difference is, Dr. Walsh continued, her voice stronger now, carrying across the ballroom, I didn't have anyone stand up for me until it was almost too late. I'm not going to let that happen to you. She turned back to the room, to the 500 people watching. Dr. Chen will be joining my team at Hopkins this fall as a chief resident. After she completes her fellowship, I expect she'll have her choice of faculty positions anywhere in the country. The applause started slowly, then built. Michael's hand was still in mine, but I could feel him trembling. I didn't know if it was pride or fear. Dr. Bradford sat down heavily in his chair at the head table. The rest of the gala passed in a blur. People kept coming to our table, congratulating me, asking about my research. Dr. Walsh gave me her card, told me to call her the next day. We have a lot to discuss, she said. Michael drove us home in silence. I kept waiting for him to say something, but he just gripped the steering wheel and stared at the rain-slicked streets. Finally, in our apartment, he spoke. Did you know about this? About Hopkins? No, I said. I had no idea. Dr. Walsh even knew who I was. He ran his hands through his hair. This is going to destroy my dad. What? You heard what she said. She basically called him out in front of everyone. Accused him of trying to hold you back. He did try to hold me back, Michael. He's been trying for 3 years. He's trying to protect you. The words came out automatically, like he'd rehearsed them. CT surgery is brutal, Becca. The failure rate is high. He just didn't want to see you get hurt. I stared at my husband. So you agree with him? It wasn't a question. I could see the answer in his face. I think, he said carefully, that you should consider what this means for us. Hopkins is in Baltimore. That's 5 hours away. How is that supposed to work? You could come with me. And do what? Give up my fellowship here. My dad's program is the best cardiology fellowship in the country. So I'm supposed to give up my career instead? I'm not saying that. I'm just saying we need to think about this practically. We went to bed angry that night. Michael fell asleep quickly, but I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying Dr. Walsh's words. I've been following your work very closely. The next morning I called her. She answered on the second ring. Dr. Chen, she said warmly. I hoped you'd call. We talked for over an hour. She told me about the NIH task force, about the research opportunities at Hopkins, about her vision for the future of cardiac surgery. She also told me about her own past. I was married to a surgeon, she said. His father was a giant in the field. He made my life hell for years. Questioned everything I did. Made me feel like I was never good enough. What happened? I asked. I left. Both of them. The father-in-law and the husband. It was the hardest thing I ever did, but it was the only way I could breathe. I thought about Michael. About the man I'd fallen in love with, the one who brought me coffee during 30-hour shifts and held me when I lost my first patient. That man seemed very far away now. Dr. Walsh's voice softened. I'm not telling you what to do with your marriage, Rebecca. But I am telling you that you're a brilliant surgeon. You have a gift. Don't let anyone take that away from you. No matter who they are. After we hung up, I sat in my car in the hospital parking lot and cried. Not sad tears exactly. Relief, maybe. Or grief for something I was only beginning to realize I'd lost. That evening, Michael's mother called me. Can we meet for coffee? We met at a small cafe near the hospital. Catherine looked tired, older than I'd ever seen her. She ordered tea but didn't drink it, just wrapped her hands around the cup. I'm proud of you, she said. For what happened last night. I didn't do anything. Dr. Walsh did all the talking. You've been doing everything, Catherine said. You've been enduring William's cruelty with grace. You've been excelling despite him trying to tear you down. That takes strength I never had. She looked out the window at the busy street. I should have left him years ago. When Michael was small, when I first realized what kind of man William really was. But I didn't. I stayed, and I let him shape our son into someone who thinks love means control. Michael's not like his father, I said automatically. Catherine met my eyes. Isn't he? The question hung between us. I thought about Michael's frozen hand last night. His defensive words this morning. The way he'd slowly stopped defending me over 3 years. What should I do? I asked. Take the job, Catherine said immediately. Go to Hopkins. Become the surgeon you're meant to be. Don't make my mistake. Don't sacrifice yourself for men who see your strength as a threat. But Michael, if Michael loves you, he'll follow you. If he doesn't, she paused, her voice breaking slightly, then you'll know. I accepted Dr. Walsh's offer the next day. The official announcement went out the following week. Congratulations came from all over the department. Other residents looked at me with new respect. Attendings who'd barely acknowledged me before stopped to chat about my research. Dr. Bradford said nothing to me directly. But the temperature dropped every time we passed in the hospital corridors. And Michael grew more distant by the day. 2 weeks after my announcement, Dr. Bradford called a family dinner. Just the 4 of us, he said. We need to discuss this situation. We gathered at his home in Beacon Hill, a 4-story brownstone filled with antiques and medical awards. Catherine set out a roast chicken and vegetables, though no one seemed very hungry. Dr. Bradford waited until we'd served ourselves before speaking. I've been thinking about your decision to leave Boston General, he said to me. And I realize I may have been unclear about my concerns. His tone was almost conciliatory, which immediately put me on guard. I only want what's best for you and Michael. And I think, perhaps there's been a miscommunication. You seem to think I don't respect your abilities as a surgeon. You called me your biggest professional failure. In front of 500 people. That was a joke, Rebecca. Poor taste, perhaps, but just a joke. You're too sensitive. I set down my fork. A joke is funny. What you said was cruel. His jaw tightened. I've spent my entire career building this program. I've trained hundreds of residents. I've saved thousands of lives. And you're accusing me of being cruel because I have concerns about the lifestyle demands of cardiothoracic surgery. You've done everything you can to undermine my confidence, I said. My voice was steady now, stronger than I'd expected. You've questioned my abilities at department meetings. You've told your son that I'm not good enough. You've made it clear that you think I'm an embarrassment to this family. That's not true, Michael said. He was trying to help you. I looked at my husband. Then why didn't it feel like help? The dinner ended badly. Dr. Bradford stormed out of his own dining room. Catherine hugged me at the door, whispering, I'm sorry, again and again. Michael drove me home in thick silence. That night, he slept in the guest room. The next few weeks were a nightmare. Michael and I barely spoke. He'd leave early for the hospital and come home late. When I tried to talk to him, he'd shut down, saying he was too tired to discuss it. Then came the phone call from Dr. Walsh. Rebecca, I need to tell you something. There's been some pushback about your appointment to the NIH task force. What kind of pushback? Your father-in-law has been making calls, questioning your qualifications, suggesting that my recommendation was based on personal bias rather than merit. My stomach dropped. Can he do that? He can try, and given his reputation, people will listen. But here's what he doesn't know. I've been documenting everything. I have colleagues at Boston General who've witnessed his behavior toward you. And I'm prepared to make this very public if necessary. I don't want to start a war, I said. Her voice hardened. He already started the war, Rebecca. You're just deciding whether to fight back. I thought about it for 2 days. Considered walking away from Hopkins, from the NIH, from everything. Going back to being small and quiet and acceptable. Then I looked at my research, at the patients I'd helped, at the surgical techniques I'd developed, at the future Dr. Walsh was offering me. I called her back. What do I need to do? We built our case carefully. Dr. Walsh connected me with colleagues at Boston General who'd witnessed Dr. Bradford's behavior. Nurses who'd heard his dismissive comments during rounds. Junior faculty who'd seen him undermine my presentations. Even some of his own fellows, tired of his tyrannical behavior, spoke anonymously. We also gathered my professional record. Publications. Surgical outcomes. Peer reviews. Letters of recommendation from attendings who weren't afraid of Dr. Bradford's retaliation. The documentation was damning. It showed a pattern of discrimination and harassment spanning 3 years. I submitted everything to Boston General's compliance office, filed a formal complaint, and waited. The hospital launched an investigation. Dr. Bradford was placed on administrative leave pending the outcome. The news spread through the medical community like wildfire. The legendary Dr. William Bradford under investigation for harassment. Michael was devastated. "You've destroyed him," he said. "You've destroyed my father's career." "He destroyed himself," I replied. "I just refused to let him destroy me too." That's when he told me he'd been offered a fellowship in Singapore, under one of his father's collaborators. The position came with a guaranteed faculty spot afterward. "And you're going to take it," I said. "It wasn't a question." "I think we need some time apart," Michael said, "to figure out what we really want." "You mean for me to come to my senses? To drop the complaint? To give up Hopkins and apologize to your father?" He didn't deny it. I moved out the next day. Stayed with a friend from residency while I finalized my move to Baltimore. Catherine helped me pack, crying quietly as we folded my clothes. The investigation took 4 months. In that time, Dr. Walsh and I wrote 2 papers together. I completed my final year of residency at Boston General, though I was essentially ostracized by anyone associated with Dr. Bradford. Michael left for Singapore without saying goodbye. The investigation concluded in August. Dr. Bradford was found to have violated multiple hospital policies regarding discrimination and creating a hostile work environment. He wasn't fired, but he was forced to step down as chief of cardiology. His research funding was reviewed. Several of his grants were revoked when it became clear he'd been using his influence to suppress competing research, including mine. The program he'd built, the one he'd dedicated 30 years to creating, was dismantled and restructured under new leadership. I should have felt victorious. Dr. Walsh certainly did. She threw me a celebration dinner when I officially joined Hopkins. "You did it," she said. "You stood up to a tyrant and won." But standing in my new apartment in Baltimore, unpacking boxes, I felt hollow. Michael sent divorce papers in September. No personal note, just documents from a lawyer. I signed them without reading them carefully. What was the point? Catherine called me every week. "How are you doing, sweetheart?" And I'd lie and say I was fine. The truth was I was drowning. The job at Hopkins was incredible. Dr. Walsh was an amazing mentor. I was publishing prolifically, my surgical skills were advancing rapidly, and I'd been invited to speak at 3 major conferences. But I went home to an empty apartment every night. Ate dinner alone. Slept alone. My success tasted like ashes. In November, something unexpected happened. The hospital's legal department called. "There's a situation we need to discuss." Apparently, Dr. Bradford had filed a defamation lawsuit against me, against Dr. Walsh, and against Boston General. He claimed that the investigation was a witch hunt, that I'd fabricated evidence because I wanted to destroy him professionally out of personal animosity. It was absurd. We had documentation from dozens of people. But he had money and lawyers and a reputation to rehabilitate. Dr. Walsh was furious. Let him try. We'll bury him in discovery. But I was tired. So tired of fighting. "Is this ever going to end?" "Yes," she said firmly. "And you're going to win. Because you're right and he's wrong. That matters." The lawsuit dragged on for months. Depositions, legal bills, media attention. Several medical news outlets picked up the story. Some portrayed me as a brave whistleblower. Others suggested I was a disgruntled resident with an axe to grind. Through it all, I operated. I taught. I published. I became the surgeon I'd always wanted to be. In February, almost a year after the gala, I got a letter. Not from lawyers this time. From Michael. He'd written it by hand, pages of cramped script. "Rebecca," he began. "I don't know if you'll read this. I don't know if I deserve for you to read this." I thought about throwing it away. But I read it. He wrote about Singapore. About working in his father's shadow, even from halfway around the world. About slowly realizing that his father's approval wasn't worth what he'd sacrificed to get it. He wrote about Catherine, about her telling him what she'd lived through. What she'd endured, what she wished she'd been brave enough to change. He wrote about seeing my name in medical journals. About reading about my surgical innovations. About feeling proud and ashamed in equal measure. "I was wrong," he wrote. "About everything. I let my father convince me that protecting him was the same thing as loving you. I chose his pride over your dignity. I chose his career over our marriage. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even expect a response. But I needed you to know that I see it now. I see what he did to you. What I did to you. And I'm sorry. God, Becca, I'm so sorry. I read the letter 3 times. Then I set it on my coffee table and stared at it for hours. The next morning, Dr. Walsh called with news. Bradford's dropping the lawsuit. What? His lawyers advised him to drop it. We were about to enter discovery, and they realized how bad it would look. All those depositions from hospital staff. All your documentation. He'd lose, and he'd look even worse. It's over? I asked. It's over, she confirmed. You won. I hung up and looked at Michael's letter again. You won, it seemed to mock me. But what exactly had I won? I had the career I'd always wanted. Respect from my colleagues. A position at one of the top hospitals in the country. My name on groundbreaking research. But I went home to silence every night. Michael called a week later. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail. I know I don't deserve to ask anything of you. But I'm coming back to Boston. I turned down the Singapore faculty position. I'm going to try to fix things with my mom. And if you're willing, even just to talk, I'd like to try to fix things with you too. I deleted the voicemail. Then I recovered it from my deleted folder and listened to it again. Dr. Walsh noticed my distraction during a surgery. Everything okay? She asked as we were scrubbing out. I don't know, I admitted. And I told her about the letter. About the phone call. She dried her hands carefully. What do you want to do? That's the problem, I said. I don't know what I want. She was quiet for a moment. Can I tell you something? About my ex-husband? I nodded. He called me, she said. About 10 years after our divorce. Said he'd realized he was wrong. That his father had poisoned him against me. That he wanted to try again. What did you do? I said no. She met my eyes. And I've never regretted it. Because by then, I'd built a life I loved. I'd built myself into someone I was proud to be. And I knew that going back would mean unbuilding all of that. But that was your choice, I said. She smiled. Exactly. It was my choice. And this is yours. That night, I sat down and wrote 2 lists. One titled Reasons to Give Michael Another Chance. The other titled Reasons to Move Forward Alone. The first list was shorter. We loved each other once. He's acknowledged his mistakes. People can change. Catherine deserves to have both of us in her life. The second list was longer. He chose his father over me repeatedly. He let me suffer rather than stand up to his dad. He left when I needed him most. I've built a life that doesn't include him. I don't know if I can trust him again. I looked at both lists for a long time. Neither one felt like the complete answer. 3 weeks later, I saw him. I was in Boston for a conference, presenting my latest research. Catherine had invited me to dinner, and I'd agreed. When I arrived at the restaurant, Michael was there. Catherine looked apologetic. I know I should have told you. But I was afraid you wouldn't come. I almost left. But Michael stood up, and he looked different. Thinner. Tired. Older than 35 should look. I'm glad you're here, he said quietly. We sat down. It was awkward at first, stilted conversation about the weather and work. But then Michael said, I read your paper in the Journal of Thoracic and Cardiovascular Surgery. The one about minimally invasive approaches to complex congenital heart defects. And? It's brilliant, Becca. Revolutionary. The outcomes data alone is going to change how we think about pediatric cardiac surgery. It was the first time in years he'd praised my work without qualification. Without his father's voice echoing behind it. Thank you, I said. Catherine excused herself to the restroom, leaving us alone. Michael reached across the table, not quite touching my hand. I know I can't undo what I did. What I didn't do. I know I broke us. Yes, I said. You did, but if there's any chance, any possibility that you might be willing to try again, he paused. I'm willing to do whatever it takes. Therapy. Moving to Baltimore. Anything. I looked at this man I'd married. This man who'd loved me and failed me in equal measure. I don't know, I said honestly. I don't know if I can trust you again. I don't know if I want to. I understand. His voice cracked. I just needed you to know that I'm here. And I'm not going anywhere. Not this time. The check came. We split it. At the door, Michael touched my arm gently. You became everything you were meant to be, he said. With or without me. I'm proud of you. I should have said that years ago. I drove back to my hotel and sat in the parking lot, crying for the second time since this all began. Not sad tears, exactly, not happy either. Something more complicated. Grief for what we'd lost. Uncertainty about what might be possible. My phone buzzed. A text from Dr. Walsh. How did it go? I don't know. I typed back. And that's the truth. I'm flying back to Baltimore tomorrow. Back to my operating rooms and my research and my life that I've built from the ruins of my marriage. Back to work that fulfills me and colleagues who respect me and a future that's entirely my own. Michael wants another chance. Catherine thinks I should consider it. Dr. Walsh thinks I should move on. And me? I honestly don't know. What I do know is this: I'm Dr. Rebecca Chen. I'm a cardiothoracic surgeon. I've developed techniques that are saving lives. I've stood up to a powerful man who tried to destroy me, and I've won. I've learned that sometimes victory costs everything. That sometimes being right means being alone. That sometimes the people who should love you will choose pride over partnership. But I've also learned that I'm stronger than I knew. That my work matters. That I don't need anyone's approval to be worthy of respect. Whether I give Michael another chance or not, whether I forgive or move forward alone, I'll do it as someone who knows her own value, who won't ever again make herself smaller to fit someone else's expectations. The waiter is bringing the check now. Catherine's hugging me goodbye. Michael's standing there, hope and resignation warring on his face. And I'm walking out the door, still not sure what comes next. But knowing finally that whatever I choose will be on my terms. Not his. Not his father's. Mine.